Hi everyone, and welcome back to InsideTech. One of the year's most anticipated smartphones, and certainly the most leaked phone, is finally here. These are the Google Pixel 4 and 4 XL, the phones we knew pretty much everything about before release, except how they actually performed in the real world. Building on arguably the best camera you'll find in a smartphone, Google have introduced a new telephoto lens, a super smooth 90Hz refresh rate display, and some new sensors for face unlock and motion controls. Strangely enough though, despite introducing new power-hungry features, Google decided to give the Pixel 4 an even smaller battery than the Pixel 3, a phone already plagued by battery life issues. I've been using these phones for the past 2 weeks, testing out all the new features, and seeing how they compare to last year's models. Let's take a look. The Pixel design has been refined for a more sleek and minimal look, now with just a single glass sheet for the rear panel. This is glossy in the case of the black Pixels I have here, but has a matte finish in the orange and white colours. I personally much prefer the feel of the matte finish, and the glossy texture is also a huge fingerprint magnet, so I can't understand why Google didn't make a matte black version instead. What I do like though is how the new square camera module matches with the glossy rear glass, whereas this contrasts with the other two colours and isn't colour matched like with the iPhone 11 Pros. The aluminium frame has a matte black finish with all 3 colours, and I have to say this feels really good in the hand. I'd even sacrifice the iPhone's stronger stainless steel frame just to have the matte finish instead, and the Pixel for me is the most comfortable phone to hold in the hand, especially the more compact Pixel 4. Along the left side we have the single SIM card slot, which means we have no expandable storage here. The phones are offering just 64GB of storage in the baseline models, with only 128GB as the other option, and this doesn't apply to all colour options or regions. We rightfully complained about Apple for their 64GB phones, but at least they offer higher storage options than 128GB. To add insult to injury, Google is not offering unlimited photo storage for original quality images this year, so their push towards forcing you to buy photo storage is pretty clear. The right side of the phone features the power button and 2 volume buttons, which are still nice and clicky, and the bottom of the phone features the microphone and speaker grills alongside the USB-C charging port. The phones have Gorilla Glass 5 for the front and rear panels, and offer the same IP68 water resistance from last year. What has changed though are the speakers, which still support stereo playback, but the shrinking of the chin has meant that the bottom speaker is no longer front-facing, but the speakers still sound pretty decent and loud. Google's Active Edge returns this year, and offers beautiful haptic feedback, which again adds to how nice this phone feels in the hand, and I really wish more phones had a feature like this. In terms of design, I think these are 2 of the nicest looking phones this year. The only thing letting them down though are the front displays. The Pixel 4 and 4 XL now have matching front display designs, and I do prefer this to the bulky notch of the 3 XL. However, that thick forehead really stands out in a sea of much more modern looking phones in 2019. Google are facing the same problem as Apple though, and the thick forehead is necessary to house the new sensors and components for face unlock and motion sense. The Pixel's face unlock uses infrared sensors, so is the more secure unlock method like Apple's Face ID, which can't be fooled by pictures of you, as with some other Android devices. This has allowed Google to remove the fingerprint scanner from the back of the phone, and use Face Unlock for secure payments and app unlocks. So here's what I love about Face Unlock. It's incredibly sensitive and fast, which means I don't have to hold the phone at a very specific angle to unlock it. In fact, most times when I just picked the phone up, it was already unlocked as I went to use it naturally. It's by far the fastest unlock method I've used, and will take you straight to the home screen without needing to press a single button or tap the screen. What I don't love about it though, is that it's sometimes too sensitive, to the point where I could often unlock it when I don't want to, just by glancing at it on my desk. The second point is much more important though, and that's that it poses a potential security risk. At the moment, Face Unlock doesn't require attention to unlock the phone, which means that you could unlock the phone even with your eyes closed. We all know in what sort of situations this might be a problem, so this is something to consider if you're not using a PIN instead. Google have publicly addressed the issue and have said that a fix is coming in the next few months, which does seem like a pretty long time to fix a security risk. I personally much prefer the convenience of Face Unlock versus a fingerprint scanner, but this issue is really disappointing, and because of Face Unlock, the display is unfortunately sacrificed due to limitations with current technology. The second major new component built into this top bezel is radar, and this enables a couple of new features. First of all, the phone will detect when you're near and illuminate the always-on display. The screen otherwise turns black when you're away from your phone, which saves on battery life. The always-on display is already a fantastic Android feature, so now it's even better. Taking this even further, as you approach to pick up your phone, the radar will detect this motion and activate the cameras and sensors to start searching for you, which is part of how the face unlock is so fast. You can also now use motion gestures by waving your hand over your device to skip songs, stop alarms, and, well, that's pretty much it. At least for now. We've seen this kind of hand gesture control before with phones like the LG G8, and I don't think this is quite as awkward here, but it still often doesn't work, and I'd rarely find this more useful than just tapping on the phone. Motion sense is extremely limited, often finicky, and offers nowhere near the level of features Google initially promised when it was in development. To give Google some credit though, this is just the beginning, and I am looking forward to what this feature could be capable of in the future. So that's the technology responsible for the large forehead, but the rest of the display is actually fairly decent. Both displays are OLED with improved colours from last year, but the resolution is higher in the XL model, which has a 1440p display. Indoors, the display looks really nice, but even at maximum brightness the screen is quite dim, and can be hard to see in bright sunlight. There's a new ambient EQ setting, which automatically adjusts the white balance based on the lighting conditions, but from my testing, this only made a subtle difference. But the standout new feature here is the 90Hz refresh rate, which makes navigating the phone extremely smooth, and has the potential to be the phone's best feature. It's not possible to show this on YouTube in a video captured at a lower frame rate, but those who've used a 90Hz refresh rate screen in real life will know the huge difference this makes to your experience. The display is adaptive, which means that it will change between 90 and 60Hz depending on your usage, so most of the time, the display won't actually be in 90Hz. You can force the display to remain at 90Hz to get the best viewing experience, but sadly, this will absolutely tank your battery life. And this leads me on to the biggest flaw with the Pixel 4. With the announcement that the Pixel 4 would have an even smaller battery than last year, a lot of us were anxious about the phone's potential battery life, and rightfully so. I was getting just about a full day's use at best, and only around 6 hours of screen on time, which is pretty poor by today's standards. You can take measures to extend your battery life, by turning off smooth display, motion sense, lowering the brightness, but in the end, the amount of features you need to disable just to achieve an acceptable battery life takes the joy away from using the Pixel in the first place. By removing the 90Hz refresh rate, you're left with a phone rocking only an average display that's spoiled by a large top bezel, and it's such a shame that the phone's best feature is undermined by mediocre battery life. I should emphasise that the Pixel 4 XL doesn't suffer nearly as much as the regular 4, and whilst its battery life is still only average at best, it performs much better than the smaller 4. For anyone who wants a new Pixel but might be concerned about reaching a full day of use, the larger XL is definitely the way to go. But from the phone's biggest weakness, we now arrive at its greatest strength, and that of course is the camera. Google have built on their fantastic camera from last year, which achieved more in a single lens than most phones could in several. The Pixel maintained its lead over the competition for a long time, but has since been overtaken by the iPhone, so Google have made some improvements in an attempt to reclaim the top spot. The 4th generation of Pixel brings a wider aperture and some software improvements to its main lens, but also sees the introduction of an additional telephoto lens. What's odd to me is the decision to include a telephoto lens alongside the main one, as opposed to an ultra-wide, especially since Google have developed their Super Res Zoom software for improved quality on digitally zoomed photos. If they couldn't offer us a triple lens camera system, I would have thought that a main and ultra-wide lens alongside Super Res Zoom would have made the most sense. If the telephoto lens at least had some crazy zoom capabilities, like we've seen with phones from Huawei, I might have forgiven it more, but it's still only 2x optical zoom. Ultra-wide offers much more versatility in your photography, so it's a shame not to see it here. Still, this shouldn't take anything away from just how good the Pixel's camera is, which offers a very high level of detail and fantastic dynamic range. For those who enjoy using the telephoto lens, you can now maintain this level of quality with the 2x optical zoom. For me personally, the telephoto lens isn't something I use very often, but it's nice to have that option there in case I need it, since the quality is much higher than digitally zooming. I typically found the white balance to be shifted slightly towards the cooler side for photos, but I really liked the vibrancy of the colours, and the consistency across the two lenses was pretty good too. The contrast and saturation is slightly enhanced to make images really pop and stand out, sitting somewhere between the over-processing of Samsung's images, but not quite as natural or true to life as the iPhone. The new Live HDR Plus with dual exposure controls lets you adjust shadows and highlights in the viewfinder in real time before taking the photo. This is extremely useful in helping you compose the perfect image, without needing to edit it in post, and is one of the best new camera features. However, the viewfinder still isn't perfect, and the image you see here doesn't match the much higher quality processed image that the camera eventually takes, especially with the telephoto previews, and this can be a little unnerving. Still, in difficult lighting conditions, the phone had no trouble obtaining a decent exposure automatically, even without adjusting the dual exposure sliders. All of these photos were taken in auto mode and haven't been edited in any way, which is testament to just how good Google's image processing is. Portrait mode returns this year, where again, the Pixel is one of the leading smartphones in its field, producing sharp images with a really nice background blur. The Pixel 4 uses the telephoto lens for added depth information, but I still didn't see a drastic difference from the Pixel 3, which again you could argue proves the capabilities of the main lens, but I would like to have seen the secondary lens adding a little bit more to the overall camera performance. What's strange is that you can't switch between wide and telephoto portrait shots. You're just given a single view that's cropped in a little bit more than the normal camera mode. The edge detection is generally very good, and even on tricky subjects will often nail the effect first time. But occasionally the phone will miss a few of the more obstructed areas, particularly when photographing pets, but less so with people. You could argue that the Pixel 4 is a downgrade when it comes to the front-facing camera, since it loses one of the dual cameras and no longer has a true group selfie mode. To compensate for this, the angle is slightly wider than the normal lens of the Pixel 3, but otherwise last year's model does have the advantage. Video on the Pixel 4 is still sadly nowhere near the level of its photo-taking capabilities, and it struggles with the bitrate and noise. I wouldn't expect iPhone level performance here, which is still miles ahead of the competition, but there are other Android devices offering more capable video recording from their cameras. You can only record in up to 4K 30 resolution, and Google have stated that 60 frames per second video was not included due to how much storage space this format would occupy. In my opinion though, this decision should be left to the consumer. If people want to use their storage to record in 4K 60, they should be able to do so. For Google to remove unlimited photo storage this year, only provide 64GB of storage in the base models, and then make this claim does seem like a kick in the teeth. To give them some credit though, I did find the video stabilization to be much improved. You can still see each step taken with these handheld shots, but the stabilization is removing the large majority of the stutter, and the performance here is better than we've seen from phones like the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. Front-facing video is also capped at 1080p 30, so Google are quite far behind the competition when it comes to video recording. Where they're definitely not behind though, is with their class-leading low light mode, Night Sight, which returns with some improvements from last year. The most obvious is that you can now use it with the new telephoto lens, so Night Sight becomes a bit more versatile this year. The Pixel can illuminate even the darkest of photos, but it's the brilliant colour and vibrancy that makes it one of my favourite low light modes on a smartphone. The main camera already does a pretty decent job with low light images, but switching over to Night Sight really brings your photos to life. Any light sources are enhanced, so your photos become more punchy and striking, and Google's version of night mode is still one of the best on the market. A lot of this is down to their excellent image processing. For example, in this image here, the Pixel has done a really good job correcting the image for motion blur. There are a lot of people moving about in this photo, but the Pixel has corrected the movement so that there are no blurred streaks, which can be a problem when taking longer exposures. You do tend to lose the natural darkness of the scene, as Night Sight brings up the exposure in the shadows. Skies, for example, tend to turn from black to a navy blue. This increased exposure often brings in unwanted noise to your image too, as you can see here in the sky, so the feature doesn't always work perfectly. In certain situations, the regular camera mode will give you better results than Night Sight, and in this photo here, the frequency of the light is out of sync with the camera's shutter speed during the longer exposure of Night Sight, so the normal photo mode was actually the better option here. Between Night Sight and the regular camera though, the phone has pretty much every situation covered, and Google could well have reclaimed the top spot with the Pixel 4. I'll have an in-depth comparison with Apple's iPhone 11 in a couple of weeks though, to decide the overall champion. Perhaps my favourite new feature though is Astrophotography, which lets you utilise Night Sight to capture the night sky. What you're looking at here is a photo of the night sky taken on the regular camera mode. It's dark, blurry, and a completely useless photo. And this is that same image taken with Night Sight. In order to do this, you'll need to set your phone up on a tripod, since the camera must be kept still whilst it takes a 4-minute exposure. This is a pretty long time to wait, but the results are absolutely worth it, and the phone has exposed more stars and in greater detail than visible with the human eye. With just a couple of light edits, you can transform these images into beautiful nighttime vistas, and the fact that this was taken on a smartphone is simply incredible. This was actually the very first attempt at astrophotography on my Pixel 4, and was not even taken in a particularly good location for viewing stars in the UK, so the potential for this photo mode is really quite exciting. Astrophotography won't be a Pixel 4 exclusive though, and is being ported to older devices, so you won't need to upgrade just to take advantage of the new feature. In terms of performance, the phones have been refreshed with the Snapdragon 855 chip, and not the 855 Plus chip that some fans had hoped for. Although to be honest, the Pixel 4's battery life is inadequate for the kinds of graphics-intensive tasks that the Plus chip enables. The RAM has also been increased to 6GB, which gives the phone a little boost when it comes to handling multiple apps in the background, and my experience so far has been pretty seamless. The performance upgrades are modest, and the test scores reflect this too, but they're also no less than was needed for what this phone was designed for. Gamers and video editors will want to look elsewhere. You'll probably notice the biggest improvement with Pixel's neural core, which processes the new Live HDR+, as well as a few other new software features. For example, it's responsible for powering a smarter and more capable Google Assistant. The world's best virtual assistant can now handle multiple tasks on the device itself, rather than needing to first communicate with Google's servers, and as a result, responses are noticeably faster. There's also a new recorder app which can automatically transcribe speech in real time. It detects your voice very quickly, and is also highly accurate even when speaking naturally. You can later search through voice notes by keywords to quickly find the one you're after, and this is easily the best recording app I've used on a phone. Being a Google phone, the Pixel 4s get Android 10 straight away, and will be the first to receive future updates too, so you'll immediately be able to take advantage of the new aesthetic, new gestures, dark mode, and all of the other features of the new software. I won't spend long on this since obviously other devices will be able to benefit from these too, but on other phones, you could be waiting months for this to happen. The Pixel version of Android is by far my favourite. I just love the refined and sleek aesthetic, but of course this is fully customizable. I also love that the phone is free from bloatware, so there's a super fast and clean experience straight out of the box. The Pixels actually power on and are ready to use extremely quickly, and it's small subtleties like this that make the Pixel such an enjoyable device to use. Google's Pixel phones always had an edge over the high-end flagship smartphones when it came to the price, but that gap is starting to close. The Pixel 4 is available from $799, and the XL model from $899, which for me is the better deal of the two. I personally love the form factor of the smaller 4, but the higher resolution display and significantly improved battery life make the XL worth the extra $100. With the Pixel 4's issues, largely centered on that poor battery life, Google have made things difficult for themselves with their pricing. By no means are these bad phones, and there's still a lot to be enjoyed for the price. It's just that the market is so competitive these days, and I can't help but feel that there are better value alternatives available. An immediate comparison to draw is to Apple's iPhone 11, clearly a direct competitor to the Pixel 4 that offers arguably a lot more and in an even cheaper package. In the UK, the iPhone 11 price is actually higher, but I must say that this is probably still the more compelling option over the Pixel 4. There are also other Android devices like the OnePlus 7 series or the Galaxy S10e that are arguably superior devices but cost less money than the new Pixels. Even from Google themselves, there are better value options available, and last year's models are still definitely worth a look. If it's just the camera you're interested in, then the far cheaper Pixel 3a could be a great option too, which delivers most of the Pixel experience but in a more budget-friendly package. For those considering upgrading, I'd struggle to find a good reason for trading in your Pixel 3 for one of these new phones, and I think hanging on for another year will be your best option. I've spent a lot of this video criticising the Pixel 4s, and it's hard to avoid this when you consider the great alternatives from the competition, even within the Google family. With some ultimately underwhelming new features, and even some surprising downgrades from last year, I really can't recommend anyone to upgrade from a Pixel 3, but that doesn't mean that no one should buy a Pixel 4. There are many people who won't exhaust their phone's battery with daily use, and using the Pixel 4 to its full potential, there's a lot to enjoy here. The interface is still snappy and fast, and the Google Assistant is now a genuinely useful and practical tool in my daily life. Face Unlock is also incredibly convenient, if a little insecure at the moment, and of course it has those incredible cameras. In spite of all of its flaws, I'll still be switching to the Pixel 4 to be my new Android device, and that's because of how it feels to use the phone. The smaller, more compact Pixel 4 has the perfect balance of size and weight, and is extremely comfortable to use, even one-handed. I can't deny that I still love this phone, and I'm able to overlook its flaws and enjoy the phone the way Google intended. Navigating Google's version of Android 10 on that 90Hz refresh rate display is simply my favourite way to use Android, even if the poor battery life means I can't do so for very long. The Google Pixel remains an appropriate name for a smartphone with such good cameras. It's just the rest of the phone that needs some work. But what do you guys think about these phones? Do the Pixel 4s offer enough to make you want to upgrade, or are you more interested in the arguably better value alternatives? Let me know down in the comments section if you've bought a Pixel 4 and are disappointed, or if you think Google have done well this year. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like to show your support, and be sure to subscribe with notifications turned on to make sure you're notified when new videos go live. Don't forget I'll have my Pixel vs iPhone video coming up very soon, so we can finally crown the smartphone camera champion of 2019. You can also find more content and my general thoughts on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at InsideTech Limited. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
No.